Hi, beautiful people, and welcome to The Slice. The Slice is where we pause with purpose, we make sense of the moment, and we break down this past week's key highlights in order to move forward together with intentional excellence. So, here are your 7 points for the week of February 13th to keep you grounded. Okay, first up, Bad Bunny. This man, he had Elmo wrote a message to him. Please look at it. But in all seriousness, the performance was phenomenal, in my opinion. It was a cultural representation, world's largest stage. So many people watched it, including the president. Although, they said they were going to boycott it, but that's what was on their screens. They couldn't help but watch. But under all of that, right, I think that we have to talk about the bigger issue. That while, yes, it was so significant culturally, it was so inspirational, there's also the part that we don't talk about, and that's the fact that there are so many American citizens that don't realize, and when I say American, I mean mainland American citizens that don't realize that Puerto Rico is a part of the United States, right? Um, let's just go ahead and clear something up really quickly. Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States of America. The people who live in Puerto Rico are U.S. citizens. Although they're U.S. citizens, their national voting power is structured a bit differently than the other 50 states. So residents of Puerto Rico have citizenship. They have a local constitution. They have an elected government. They elect one representative to represent them in Congress, so in DC, right? But that representative, they can't vote on final legislation. Puerto Rico also doesn't have any U.S. senators, and residents of Puerto Rico don't vote in the presidential election. So they don't get to be a part of the entire system, although they do have U.S. citizenship. In comparison, right, the 50 states, so whatever state you're in, let's use Connecticut, because, shout out to Connecticut. Let's use Connecticut for an example. In Connecticut, if you're a resident of Connecticut, or a U.S. citizen from Connecticut, you elect your voting members of Congress. You have 2 senators. You vote for the president. But those same rights don't exist if you live in Puerto Rico. And so I know you're probably saying, well, why does this matter anyway? If I don't live there, why does it matter? It matters because not only are these folks also U.S. citizens, but it matters because of policy. And that's the part I need you to understand, the power that policy has and the power of your congressional representatives. These are the people that decide how money's allocated if there's a disaster. These are the people that decide how healthcare coverage happens. These are the people that make economic and long-term investment decisions on your behalf. And if you were born or lived in Puerto Rico or any other U.S. territory and not one of the 50 states, then you too would be experiencing this. So let's say you decided, hey, I'm retired. I want to go live out in the U.S. Virgin Islands, or I want to live in Puerto Rico after my retirement. That's great. But that means your Social Security benefits aren't going with you. That means you may not be receiving the same medical coverage that you thought you would. That means that when it's voting time and everyone's hype on social media, you can't participate for the presidential election votes. So while you may hold that passport and you may be a citizen of the United States of America, you're only a partial citizen if you live in one of the territories. So noting all of that, which I know is a lot, It is. It's a lot, especially if you've never processed that information before. Noting all that, one, again, shout out to Bad Bunny for opening up the conversation, right? For a conversation that should be had often, but if you're not one of the territories, then it's usually not a priority for you from a 50 state perspective. So, shout out to Bad Bunny. And my hope is that this opens the door for future conversation, legislative change, and significant policy change for our fellow American citizens. Okay, let's go ahead and turn the page. And before we move on to the second point, I'm going to go ahead and tell you all, if you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for your support. And let's get right back to it. Happy Black History Month. This year, we celebrate 100 years of Black excellence, of Black founders, Black leaders, of Black truth and Black pain, of Black success and Black journeys. This year is 100 years that we recognize our ancestors and the leaders of today and everything and everyone in between. So, yes, it's Happy Black History Month, but also I have to acknowledge the elephant in the room. Our political climate right now is darn near suffocating. It's beyond complex. And shout out to all of the Black folks that are around, still pushing and doing work in their respective spaces, still thriving and surviving where they can. And so while we, of course, celebrate Black leadership and Black excellence across business, culture, science, the arts, the global influence that exists, I have to also acknowledge that there are real-time debates about race in multiple sectors, how it's taught in the classroom. You can't use the word DEI. How the Supreme Court now says it's okay to discriminate based on what someone looks like, as long as it's law enforcement doing it. The president tweeted former President and First Lady Barack Obama as monkeys. This is where we are. And so, yes, that juxtaposition matters. And we have to also acknowledge that too. There is no space where someone who is a person of color living in the United States of America has the ability to parse their lips and say, oh, politics, I don't get into that. Politics, it doesn't matter for me. It matters because history shapes identity. Identity shapes policy, and policy shapes our lived experience. And so here we are, 100 years later, and we're still having some of the same conversations. So yes, of course, celebration is important, and I will be the first to go on top of a rooftop and shout, Happy Black History Month. But at the same time, I recognize that there's so much more work to be done. And I'm excited to continue doing that work with you all, to keep you grounded with tons of information in a clear way so that we aren't overly complicating issues, to help you stay grounded, to help you understand how to do that work. But I also strongly suggest that we as a people, as a collective, and not just Black folks, not just folks of color, not just people in the United States, but we as human beings across this globe, we as global citizens have to make the decision that we're going to continue to push forward together. And that doesn't mean I'm advocating for people to go out and do work that they don't feel like is their ministry. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is find what works for you. figure out what space that is, because we have to choose to carry forward. Okay. So now that we already talked about Bad Bunny and we acknowledged Black History Month, let's move through number 3. The Olympics. Did y'all see these Olympians were out here doing their thing? I am so proud. Shout out to all of the Olympic gold medalists that lost their ribbons because they were jumping for so much joy. It was so beautiful to see. I've learned so much. If you don't follow us on our social media platforms, please do. We constantly post about just a whole host of things to keep you grounded. But one of those this week was the Olympics. And I never knew how they made sure that the ice was evenly distributed for the Olympics, or I never knew that there was an official iceman who his whole job is to make sure that that the platforms are ready for the athletes. So it was exciting. It definitely is a moment of pride, and at the same time, it was interesting to see these athletes that usually don't talk about politics, right? Especially American athletes, to see them not just have an opinion, but have an opinion that was very pointed at the current administration, and so that was interesting, right? I think, especially to see folks, talk about these issues and bring that to light. So that was awesome. And then shout out to the U.S. Olympic teams who brought home gold medals. Always an amazing feeling. Always, always, always supporting that. So definitely have a look at that if you haven't already. All right, number 4. The monks that made it, y'all. They have made it to DC. Well, technically, I think they fly out of Maryland, but they made it. They made it to DC. They walked from They walked from Texas to Washington, D.C. On a path of peace. And so it was amazing. There was one monk, when he got to D.C., he told the people, he said, put your lover away before 1 hour before you go to bed. And people were so confused. I too was confused because I didn't know where that was going. But what he was referencing was your cell phone, your smartphones, or any electronic that you are so consumed with or so connected to, that you can reconnect with not just yourself, but with your spirit. That to practice mindfulness before you go to bed. All the things that we should know, we should be doing, but it's always a great reminder. And so it was beautiful to see how many people made their way out to DC. It was also great to see how many people just learned a lot about the Buddhist religion and made a choice to learn something that could be applicable to their lives without feeling like they were cheating on their own religion. So that was great. It was great. It's a great sense of community. It was beautiful to see. And shout out to the monks. I do want to know, and I have to look this up. I haven't seen anything so far, but I'm curious to know if the monks met with any U.S. government representatives when they reached D.C. I know that they met with respective mayors, but I don't know if they met at the federal level once they reach DC. So I'll have to look to see. Okay, y'all, bear with me. Number 5. So we're gonna clump together 3 significant political conversations that have been happening over the week. And the reason why it's only listed as number 5 is because I'm not going to steal your joy, right? There are other things that we can be talking about, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention these 3 points under number 5. And they all are relevant to the current administration. So, first off, let's talk about the Epstein files and Lady Maxwell and her role. So if you follow us on our social media platforms, then you would have seen a small highlight where we ask people to think about her process to citizenship. So, Maxwell, key associate of Epstein, she's a U.S. citizen, yes. She's also a French and UK citizen. But what's significant is the timing and her window that she became a U.S. citizen. So the crimes that she's being prosecuted for are between 1994 and 2004. And during that same time period is when she became a U.S. citizen, where she naturalized as a U.S. citizen. So, of course, now I got questions, right? Because one of the requirements for U.S. citizenship is that you adhere to U.S. laws and regulations. As a former diplomat, as someone who not only used to process U.S. immigration applications as well as visas, right? But someone that understands and has read the INA, has read our laws around this. There's usually a background check that happens, even though I get it, right? Early 2000s, the technology isn't where it is today. But you can't convince me that she had this significant of influence around her and that she was buddy with Epstein and nobody was like, oh, well, maybe we should hold on that application. Maybe, because you also can't convince me that at that time period, people weren't at least suspicious of his activities, even if you couldn't prove it yet, that there wasn't some form of doubt. And we tend to err on the side of caution, right? Like you don't just approve applications in a hurry. If you have questions, you follow up on those questions. So here I am following up on that question, right? I would be extremely interested to know what that looks like for her. I'd also be interested to see where this goes, right? Because she pled the fifth. She was like, I'm not telling no secrets. And I'm not revealing any information, although I am a host of institutional knowledge when it comes to the institution of Epstein and all of his activities. So it's interesting, right? Like to see her continue to say in front of Congress that she's not going to reveal any information. It's also interesting to just watch where this goes, right? Because no matter how much the current administration tries to distract the people are not going to let this one go, right? I think as a nation, we're way too invested. I think it's also something that people that like they know, they just also want to see accountability. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. I pray that the survivors find peace in their own respective spaces, even if they never find it from the accountability of our government. So that's one, right? So Lady Maxwell was a significant conversation this week. The second conversation this week was our guy, Wes Moore. Wes Moore is the governor for the state of Maryland. If you don't know who he is, please look him up. He has a phenomenal book. Please look him up. But he's also, I am a fan of his political finesse, if you will, right? Wes Moore is a great example of what it looks like to play the political chess game well. So yeah, anyway, this week Wes Moore's been a significant topic of conversation because 45 decided not to invite Wes Moore, as well as one other governor from Colorado, to this annual governors meeting that's held at the White House. And so I truly believe that this administration's key philosophy is, if we used to do it for tradition and we've always done it that way, then we're scratching it. Forget it. We're never going to do it again. And while I understand that, right, because I am always the first person to say, is this nostalgia or does this have meaning, right? But I really feel like this administration, from the Rose Garden to the Kennedy Center, their philosophy is, we're not doing it the same way, even if it does have value. So he didn't invite these two governors to the governor's meeting, and it has caused an uproar, as it should, right? And the White House has cited that last year Governor Wes Moore didn't attend this meeting, and so therefore, like, why would he? 45 himself said that Wes Moore and Colorado Governor Jared Polis were not worthy, was his statement of an invitation. And so I think at its core, right, this highlights kind of where we are right now, right? Like, either people are going to just continue to adhere and play this game, or they're going to pause and say, you know what, if you're trying to play the game differently, then me too. And so that's what we saw from the other governors. So the governors as a collective have this organization called the National Governors Association. This association, the president of the association came out and was like, nope, if all of our governors are invited, then none of us are going. And so it does represent all 55 states and territories. And so it will be interesting to see if there are governors that do decide, you know what, we're going to go ahead and go. I know this is always a contentious point, because not going to the White House and not being overly cautious of the feelings of 45 tends to lead to your state not having federal funding, or you having issues in the future. So yeah, we will see. So that's two, right? And then the big one, and this is one that if you are not already registered to vote, I need you to make that your first priority. So I need you to say it with me. Say the SAVE Act. Okay, say it one more time. The SAVE Act. SAVE, SAVE. The SAVE Act passed the House this week, and so that means it's off to the Senate. But the SAVE Act is basically a piece of legislation that's going to make it harder for people to vote. So the SAVE Act basically says that they're going to require proof of U.S. citizenship when you're registering to vote in federal elections, right? So the next time that you go to register to vote in a federal election, that you have to bring proof of citizenship, right? And that's fine and dandy for, let's say, for anyone born after 2000s in a city. That makes sense, right? That may work for you. But that doesn't work for everybody. And that is the point. That there are so many marginalized groups that won't work for. Nor do we have a system in place already to make that happen. Because voting happens again this October. It's February. It also matters because research has shown that lower income Americans are less likely to hold government issued documents like a passport, right? Our passport is not free. Now, if that's a conversation we want to have about requiring U.S. citizens to register to vote and requiring them to bring a passport, then if you're going to require that, then maybe we make it free. Maybe we make that document free, but we would never do that because it brings in revenue to the State Department, which already is less than 1% of our overall federal budget, right? It also, this piece of legislation would impact Black households completely. The other piece of the SAVE Act that's really important applies to married women who often, especially in the U.S., they adopt the last name of their spouse. And if that last name doesn't match the birth certificate that they're providing, then they too would be ineligible to vote. But we also have to remember where this is coming from, right? This is the same administration that maybe about a week and a half ago had the DNI director and the FBI go to Georgia, Fulton County to be exact, and grab ballots from an election in 2020. 2020. This is the same election that there are still some in this current administration that echo these disinformation talking points that says that 45 won the election in 2020 and not Joe Biden. So when we look at this act, right, like when we look at this piece of legislation, while I understand the overarching goal, we have to pause to remember where it's coming from and how they're implementing it. So now what do we do with this information? You advocate. You have the power as a taxpayer, as an American citizen, you have the power to contact your congressional representatives at the local, state, and federal levels. And if you don't know who they are, then please, I urge you to click the link below and find out. When you're contacting them, if you need help, listen, message me. If you need help, message me. There are so many resources to use. First, Google it, right? What do I say to my congressional representative? How do I write an email to them? Most of your congressional representatives also have a commentary or an inquiry box or chat box on their websites as well. But advocate, talk about how this would impact you. Because unless they're hearing from you, then they think it's all fine and dandy. And they assume, oh, people aren't that bothered by it. I haven't gotten any messages from the American people. But if we're going to continue to stay grounded in excellence, then we have to also advocate for our own rights. And that starts there. Number 6. Okay, y'all. Number 6 is absolutely exciting for me. Here at Watermelon Strategies, we focus on a lot. We focus on just a range of issues, right? From leadership advisory, policy and global affairs, executive communications, business development. But for this moment, for number 6, we are going to focus on branding and culture, and that is through fashion. So if you didn't know already, then this past week was New York Fashion Week. And when I tell you, these people have showed out. The outfits I saw, the inspiration that was taken from them, the cultural representations to the flashbacks that they did. There was 80s influence and 60s influence, and it was just amazing. Like the outfits were amazing. But specifically, in my opinion, the person that kicked off New York Fashion Week this year was Coco Jones. Coco Jones showed out at the Super Bowl, and her outfit was phenomenal. It was gorgeous. It was feminine. It was playful. It was whimsical. It represented so much, and specifically it represented culture. And if you are anything like me, while I was watching the Super Bowl, and of course I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I only really watched the beginning, the singing, right? So Coco Jones and Charlie, and then I went and only watched the halftime show. That's as much of the Super Bowl for me. But while I was watching the Super Bowl, while I was watching Coco Jones sing, lift every voice and sing, I looked at my husband and I was like, oh my gosh, I think her outfit is a tribute to Whitney Houston. Now, after the Super Bowl was done, all these folks came out and said, yes, her outfit was a tribute to Whitney Houston. And so if you too had that thought, if you too saw the outfit and before social media revealed that it was a tribute to Whitney Houston, if you were like, yeah, I think it is, then my dear, I have some news for you. You and I are now officially grown. We are grown. We have moved to the other side. We can reference points in history in real time without somebody telling us about them. But that also means that I'm going to need you to do me a favor, right? I need you to go ahead and make sure that all your doctors, dentists, and all other appointments are booked this year because, again, we're grown. But yes, that is number 6. It was a delight to see. And also, just if you haven't checked it out already, definitely check out, utilize whatever social media platform you're on, or follow our platforms and look at the outfits from New York Fashion Week. And that brings us to number 7. So, as you may know, number 7 is the number of completion. And it wouldn't be complete without us adding watermelon strategies as our final point to keep you grounded in strategic excellence for the week ahead. So, this past week, and thank you to all those that have liked, subscribed, followed us across multiple social media platforms. This past week, we kept you grounded in strategic excellence in a few ways. First, through our melon brief. We highlighted the melon brief from January that talked about the mantle paradox. And basically, it's the idea that Generation X and millennials are the leaders of today, that we were past the mantle, and it talks through steps and on how to be a better leader now that we know this, that we may not have had an official welcome ceremony or congratulations ceremony about being the leaders of today. But in order to pass the mantle down correctly, so we're preparing the next generation of leaders, there are a few key leadership tenets that we really need to focus on. Specifically transformational leadership and legacy leadership. And so if you haven't read that, definitely head over to our Substack or go onto our Instagram page so you can see a few highlights and have a read of that. The other way we kept you grounded, and this is one that's always exciting for us, is highlighting key news of today, right? So much happens in our world. And it's a challenge to consume all of it all at once. And that's the point of the slice, right? And that's why you're here, to kind of get the key highlights and to get a grounded perspective on what it all means. But if you're interested in more, if you're hungry for more, then please do, as you follow along through our social media platforms, you'll notice that we highlight daily news as well. And we share just thought-provoking opinions for you to really stay grounded in excellence. And so one of the other ways that we kept you grounded are through what we call leadership seeds. And so every week we post across our social media platforms a leadership point for you to consider, right? It sometimes can be a question that challenges how you think about leading in whatever space you're in. And when we talk about leadership, we don't necessarily, it doesn't like have to mean that you are working for the government and you are a diplomat, right? Like it doesn't have to look like that. It could mean that you're just leading in your household and you want to do it better. It could look like you're leading at your church community and you're trying to figure out ways to make a better impact. It could mean that you're leading the Girl Scouts of America in your local troop. And so, whatever that leadership looks like for you, that's where the leadership seeds come in. Something that will inspire you to think bigger, to expand your perception of what strategic excellence looks like, and to keep you grounded as you continue to excel and lead in whatever your respective space is. And most importantly, if you are someone that is trying to figure out how to do leadership differently, if you're like, hey, I'm really interested in amping my executive presence, or I want to be better in a specific space, or maybe I have this community challenge and I need someone to help think about it in a different way and help me achieve that goal. Or maybe I'm a small business owner that is just looking to be better in my respective space. Then please know that we are here and ready when you are. If you're interested in partnering with us, feel free to visit our website at watermelonstrategies.com. Click the page that says Let's Connect, fill out our form, and to begin our partnership in expanding the standard of strategic excellence together. So with that, with all all of that, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being with us today. If we are taking you on a journey and you are driving, listening to us, or you're at work, or washing the dishes, right? Whatever that looks like, we thank you for allowing us into your space. We hope these 7 points will keep you grounded in your week ahead. And next week, we will see you again as we talk about what is going on in the world. Have a beautiful day, beautiful people. Talk soon.